Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Creativish Podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Mariana. Today we have an episode for all of our early 20s people, or maybe even younger. Maybe 18, 17,
19.
You know, that time when you're just trying to figure out what you want from your career, from your life, and you feel like there are so many endless possibilities to what you can do. And honestly, this time period of our lives, there's a lot that I wish I could go back and tell my younger self. So that's why we're creating this episode. We wrote down some questions that we knew we had back then that we wished somebody would have answered for us. And honestly, we're not that old. We know we are still in our early 20s, but I feel like we've gained a lot of clarity from experiences that we've had, and also what we wish we would have done, things that we would have told our younger self. So that's kind of like what this episode is all about.
And yeah, as Addie said, we're still in our early 20s and we still have a lot to learn. But yeah, we still think we have some knowledge to share.
So the points that we're going to be covering in today's episode are: number one, what exactly should you do when you don't know anything? Like when you don't know your purpose, when you don't know what your passion is, when you feel aimless going into like university per se, or just stepping out of high school and you really are not sure what you want out of your life or your 20s or your career.
Or you're about to graduate college as well.
We're also going to be talking about how to break into an industry without any experience. And then lastly, how to figure out your competitive advantage. Let's get into it. In your early 20s is such a good time for you to try a bunch of different things. Because in your 20s, you have like a higher risk tolerance. You don't have so many responsibilities. In your early 20s, maybe you really don't know what your ultimate passion and purpose is. And it's by trying a lot of different things that you kind of like figure out. So I wish that I would have spent more time doing different things, going into different industries and learning more that way, which I still can. Like I'm still in my early 20s and I still can do that. But yeah, specifically in
like a college setting, for example, I feel like we only stayed within like the marketing girls and like the marketing group. So I feel like nowadays I would venture out into the communications department, especially that communications department, because our college was a communications university, which now looking back, the communications students had so many assets, and I would have just liked to have somebody in my friend group that had access to those assets, you know, that had access to that equipment. Like for example, they had a radio station. So how cool would it have been to at least, you know, I don't know, try my hand at something. So also that, like if you are in a college setting or if you do decide to go to college, try to look for friends that are in other departments and doing other different things, because ultimately that is going to be helpful in the long run as well. And that's what I wish I could tell little baby Kale that was in the university. Like try to hang out with different people.
It enriches your experience so much and it builds up your identity. I think that specifically if you are trying to get into the workforce, let's say in a more traditional setting, I think specifically now people are looking for people that can do a bunch of different things, and that is going to be such an important competitive advantage when you're, for example, at an interview, when you say that, oh yes, I can do marketing and I can also do graphic design or photography.
Or a little bit of PR.
Yeah.
Which is, fun fact, what I was able to do at my marketing assistant contract position, because as I said, that's kind of like a media company, and what I'm doing, it has like a marketing assistant title, but it's a little bit of PR as well. So when they were interviewing me and they were asking me about what did I understand about PR and all that stuff, or about media, I at least knew a little bit because I had taken 1 or 2 classes about communications and PR. So I understood the basics of it, and I was able to defend myself in that interview and be like, oh yeah, of course I know this and this and this. And that's how you pick up these skills along the way and put them in your toolkit.
Diversifying is very important. Something that I also recommend to do when you're in your early stages, when you don't know what you want, is to fill out the Ikigai diagram. The ikigai diagram is this diagram where it's like 4 circles. One circle is like, what do you love? The second circle is, what are you good at? The third one is, what does the world need? And then the fourth one is, what can you be paid for? And then you kind of like figure out which thing has been repeated in all of the circles. And that should be like the thing that you can focus on.
Which is basically like your purpose. Your ikigai is your purpose.
It can be, but I don't know. Like, do
your
we have
purpose changes?
Exactly. Like, I think that your purpose changes.
It's not one single purpose. Like, you could have a purpose in your early 20s, then in your late 20s, have another purpose of things you want to do and, you know, constant themes in your life. So also chill out, because sometimes in your early 20s, sometimes every single decision you do can feel so permanent, when in reality it's not permanent at all. So if you do one decision today, yes, it's gonna have other effects, but you know, there's, like you said, the risk tolerance is very high when you're in your early 20s, depending of your circumstance, of course, but most of the time you are going to have a risk tolerance that's pretty high, so you can change course if you decide to. So not every decision has to be set in stone.
Yeah.
So if you say you're going to do this big thing, or I don't know, if you want to start something new, or if you have a certain project and you feel like starting it is so big, just start it. And if you don't fulfill it, that's fine as well. If you want to change it, it's okay.
Exactly. And I think that not a lot of people have a passion in their early 20s. So sometimes getting a job will tell you a lot about yourself and knowing what you want. Like, I got a job as a waitress, and that taught me that I can never ever be a waitress ever again,
or be in customer service job.
Yeah.
Although what you're doing, you are a service provider, but what I mean is
totally
like
different.
You know, whatever. But comparing it, like, for example, yes, you did get the job as a waitress, didn't enjoy it at all, only lasted a day.
2 days.
Okay, 2 days. But when you got a job and as West Elm as a social media manager, you thrived in it and you were the best. You were the best.
Thanks, love. Thanks for saying that. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about today. If you're in college, or if you're in your early stages of your 20s, should you start your own thing, or should you get experience from a job?
Our journey has been a little bit different. So if you know anything about us, you know that at 17 we had a product-based business, you know, soaps, deodorants, all of that. And then at like 2020, we decided to shift into services. So now we're service girlies. But when we were in that product-based business, we learned so much. And because when you have your own business, you learn so much if you're really putting in the work to grow it, and if you're really like, you have that drive to learn things and to understand how things work. Now, if you are scared or you don't really know what type of business you could create, what I would suggest is either working at a small business, which is something that I also did, or working in a startup, and like a small startup. And when you do this, when you work at a small business or a startup, you probably will have more than one job. Like, you'll have a bunch of different jobs. And I just feel like that is a perfect opportunity for anybody that is young, because again, you don't have that many responsibilities. In the grand majority of things, you don't have that many responsibilities in your personal life, so you're able to really experiment and have fun with things. And that's what I did. Like, I was able to work with another small business, and it was basically the owner and me. And so I did a bunch of different things. And what I would also recommend, if you're a Gen Zer, I know sometimes we're entering the workforce, and I see it a lot on TikTok, you know, trying to find a balance between your work and your personal life, and all of that is really important. But what I would also suggest is to, wherever you can, try to make yourself indispensable and really valuable as much as you can to your abilities. For example, don't say, like, if somebody asks something of you, don't say like, oh, that's not my job. Like, I get that point, but try to have fun with it and try to experiment with maybe things that aren't directly related to what you were hired to do, because in the process you're going to learn so many new things, and that is just amazing and puts you in a great position.
Yeah, I think that you're sharing that because in your unique experience, Kelly was working as a social media person for this small company where it's just her and the owner, and then she also had the opportunity to do the website.
Yeah, I
Now,
was
if
able
she would
to
have said
do the
that,
website. I was able to like get in touch with retailers, like design an ebook, develop
yeah,
recipes. Like I was able to do so many things.
but if you would have just said like, "Oh, that's not my job,"
Mm-hmm.
like we wouldn't be here
Yeah.
doing websites for a living.
Yeah, like if you're in corporate America, maybe this is not the best advice for you because you're working in such a big machine, because usually bigger businesses are machines and you're just supposed to do this one thing and you're supposed to do it very well. This advice mostly applies to people that want to learn a lot of different things at once. So that's why I would suggest stepping into a small business or a startup environment, because you are going to have to do that. And in an interview, they are probably going to tell you that,
Yeah,
because they don't have that many employees to begin with.
especially like at a startup, you have a lot more agency over your what you do,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a lot more resources, people that know people that can get you in touch with people in the industry. So I think that that is something that I wish I would have been a bit more ambitious with, maybe getting a role at a startup
Mm-hmm.
that was, bigger.
Yeah, I feel like with our internships, I don't know, I think it was pre-pandemic, like literally like 1 or 2 months before the pandemic, that we got our internships. And especially I think both of us wanted something locally that we could like go into an office and like do the thing to see how it felt. But yeah, definitely in hindsight, even when the pandemic hit, I think I would have applied to maybe other startups, or I don't know, some other business. But it's just our story, we got into a lot of burnout, so we have a very unique path, and it's not too late to get an internship somewhere else or like a entry level job at a startup. But yeah, we're just saying that it's a lot easier when you are in college.
Yeah, I guess I wish I would have had something that would have challenged me a bit more
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't feel so easy. Because
Exactly.
looking back, like you don't really grow from easy. From
Mm-hmm.
something that feels like a walk in the park, I'm not really growing, I'm not really learning that much.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I wish I would have been more ambitious with in my early 20s.
Yeah.
Also, like ambitious with my academics. Like if I'm paying for school, like I wish I would have had the idea of like maybe studying abroad, maybe doing a transfer to a better school or something like that. And I guess I was more like the easy route, or like, oh, the schoolwork is so easy, but girl, you're paying for it.
Exactly. That's what I wish I would have also realized, in a sense, like, because I think for us both, school felt really easy, and maybe it wasn't supposed to feel that easy. And our internships as well felt very easy. And I think it was because, first of all, when we chose the internships, we didn't think they would be like easy. But when we did get to them, it was like, oh, well, I did the internship. Goodbye. We just settled on that. And I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have really put myself in an environment that would have challenged me, and I could have met new people, which is why I decided, for example, my internship was like at an events company slash small media company here in Puerto Rico. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to go to events and all that. But then the pandemic happened, and then, we all got burnt out, and I was just like, well then, whatever. That was the internship. I did it. And now looking back at it, I would have been like, try to find another internship that, that could also help you thrive with other goals. But yeah.
Yeah, so in hindsight, I wish I would have been more open to challenges
Mm-hmm.
and been a little bit more ambitious. So the next point is how to break into an industry without any experience.
Mm-hmm. So, in our lifetime, we've broken into 2 industries without experience. Number one, we've broken into the direct to consumer industry slash wellness industry. And yeah, basically just search, just read books, listen to podcasts, and just immerse yourself completely and fully into the education and into the practice. Like, just start doing stuff and, start throwing spaghetti against the wall, to the wall, and see
Exactly.
what works.
Yeah, I think that one, if you diversify your skills early enough, you can be a really great asset to any industry that you're trying to break into. Also, like, just know that you don't have to figure it all out on your own. And there are a lot of people out there that will gladly give you advice, that will gladly give you like 30 minutes of their day to join on a Zoom call where you can ask them questions.
Yeah.
And that is something that you can do.
And that's actually something that we're trying to do right now. We're trying to immerse ourselves completely and fully into the education of learning about venture capitalism and learning about raising money and all that industry, which we have no direct connection to. So there's like no one to ask, quote unquote.
In our circle.
Exactly. But when you start searching, there are people to ask that are one connection away. So, for example, a few months ago, we had a Zoom call with another girl that had raised money and had sold her company, actually. And we gained so much insight from that call that we maybe couldn't have gotten anywhere else, or maybe it would have taken us a little bit longer by searching online or listening to podcasts, etc. But because we had that call and we connected with her, now she's a connection in our life, and it's so much more beneficial. So don't be afraid to reach out. Like, she did it with so much love and she was so open to it and listening to our questions, and that was so nice.
Yeah, so don't be afraid of asking people that you are currently following that are already in the industry, like asking, maybe not straight away for a call, but maybe asking them some questions on an email. If you are asking for a call, be as flexible with them as possible and just ask them, like, are you available in like the next few months? Like, just be as flexible as you can. And honestly, like, you don't have to figure it out all on your own.
Yeah. And again, if you're in college, people are way more willing to talk to you. So take that to your advantage, because a lot of people want to teach what they know. Most people are nice about it. So, use your school as an excuse if you want to learn from somebody.
College?
So, as an example, if I was in a marketing class, which is something that we did a lot in my marketing classes, we would create a lot of deep dives on certain companies and certain strategies and all of that. And if we were to do something about a particular company, like, we would have to like do everything about that company. So, for example, that is, let's say we were creating like a traditional marketing plan for that company. Well, then we would call billboard companies to get rates. We would call just a bunch of different things that we would actually communicate as if that company was a client. Or we could talk to people within the company and say, hey, I'm from X university, we're doing a project on your business, could we come to your office, and stuff like that. And people would usually be way more willing to accept a student for education purposes than just no reason, or just like, I don't know, I'm learning on my own or something. At least that was my experience, because that's what I did in college. I don't know how it would be if you're not in college and you're trying to get resources from certain companies, but that worked for me very well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid of asking. And maybe I'm thinking, like, if you ask someone for a little Zoom call, maybe you can like buy them a cup of coffee, send them a gift card. Also, if you are doing that call, go in with specific questions and make sure that it's not questions that you could have found on interviews about them if they have interviews or something like that. and make sure that you're upfront with them about that, what type of questions that you want answered. So another point that I have about breaking into an industry without an experience is this quote that I saw the other day, and it's, the amount of time you spent believing we can't is more than enough time to learn how you can. And I think that just rings so true. And a lot of time we really just stay stuck in the like, oh my gosh, I don't know anyone in that industry. I don't really know anything. And why would anyone ever hire me type of mindset? And you could just be doing a million things to really figure out how you can do this and how you can make this happen. Because it's really all in the belief that you have in yourself, as cheesy as that sounds.
And fun fact, Ariana found that quote for me because, again, we're trying to break into trying something new, maybe. And I was getting so caught up in it. I was getting so caught up in the littlest, tiniest details. And I was feeling like such a big imposter because, again, it's an industry I have not no connection at all, but it's like it seems so big in my head, like everything I have to do in order to get where I want to get, that it just feels so macro. And then Addie like pulled up that little quote and put it in a post-it and showed it to me, and I was like, okay. And we actually bought a dry erase board and we wrote everything down. And you know, when you put those thoughts like into specific things you have to do, it makes it a lot less scary. So just start with what you've got. Because again, what you said, like, that was my objection. That was like, oh, but I don't know. I just need to learn. I just need to learn. I just need to learn. And that's like my human design. My if anybody knows, my first line is like the 3, which is like, I just need to learn everything basically before I do it. And sometimes that's not the best quality in me. And yeah, I was just stuck in a loop of learning and searching and learning and searching and learning and searching. And Addie like pulled me a bit and was like, hey, maybe if you start a little bit. What's the quote?
The amount of time we spent believing we can't is more than enough time to learn how you can.
Exactly. And that was what was happening. I was saying, oh, I can't do it because I'm not ready. I can't do it because I don't know everything. And I'm not gonna know everything before I take the first step. I hadn't even taken a first step. So, you know, and now we're making more progress, a little bit every day.
little baby steps every day. But yeah, what we did is we bought a little dry erase board and we did a timeline, but we worked backwards. Mm-hmm. So we set the ultimate vision and goal the most ambitious way we could in the end, and then we worked backwards and like, what exactly do we need to do to get there? And I think that is probably the best way to do things, because sometimes when we have an idea for something, we start with the most basic and obvious way to start it. And instead, if you're just like a bit more creative with the end goal and having a really ambitious idea with the end goal first, mm-hmm. and working your way backwards, you can connect a lot of dots that way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I did that recently as well with like my 20s life plan, because I got this idea that I'm not completely ready to share, but it's pretty big and ambitious. So I did a whole map of like, okay, if I want to be there at that age, working backwards, everything that I have to do. And honestly, I think I had a pretty life-changing moment putting such an ambitious goal in mind at the end of my 20s. And now it's kind of like making me feel more intentional about my day-to-day things, because I know that I want this huge thing to happen at the end of the tunnel. So this decision of like putting this big thing at the end of my 20s, it's more about who I become in the process. And I've already felt it putting such a competitive and bold, ambitious goal. It's really not if like, oh, if I make it happen or not, but like, I'm excited about the process. And part of breaking into an industry without any experience is also about honing in on what you believe is like your competitive advantage. or more so about figuring out what advantages you have that other people don't in the industry. And for example, if you're listening to this, we made this episode specifically for like younger people, people in their early stages of their career. And guess what? Like, you all already have one big advantage, and it's that you're young, you're very young, you have a very unique point of view in the world. And that is so important for any industry and so fresh and so indispensable, I guess, because they bring diversity to the table.
Exactly. Companies need to have young people on their teams to stay relevant. And that's the Gen Z advantage. Gen Z is also amazing with technology. Most of us are. And it comes very easy to us. And sometimes we don't see that as an advantage, or we don't see that as a skill, because sometimes we might take it the other way and just use it for social media and stuff like that. But actually, no, we're really good with technology and with understanding different types of software. And that is something that is your unique advantage, and something that really comes in handy that you can really leverage at your next job or when you're building your own business.
Yeah. And I think that just the culture, being in your early 20s, I think we all have like this innate culture of wanting things to be better, just kind of like questioning the system, if you will. And that way of thinking is very relevant and very important into any industry that you're coming in, because you're already coming in with like this mindset of how can this be better? How can we do things differently?
And again, that is also an advantage because Gen Z are problem solvers. Like every Gen Z person I've met or see on TikTok or hear from on other podcasts, it's like they're innately problem solvers. And I think that's an overall trend within our complete generation. Like, we're just trying to see how to make things efficient and how to make things work better. And that is an amazing skill to have. Like, if you're a critical thinker and if you think something could be better than it is, look for another solution and look for a way to fix a problem. And there, you have a consulting business.
Gen Z should just all be consultants then. Yeah, something that I also saw on a TikTok recently that kind of like inspired this podcast was this girl. She was talking about how, once again, she's like in this point of her career where she's being hired by people that are like 30 years older than her, and she kind of feels like this little imposter syndrome. But she was coming back to the reality that is like the people, the 50-year-olds that are hiring her need her maybe even more than she needs them. So I think having that mindset going into interviews, jobs, opportunities, that like you are valuable and that you are an asset and you have so much to bring to the table, and there is no reason why you should be like tucked away in your room feeling like you're so young and that you're not like important anywhere.
No, exactly. And all this talk about the Gen Zers in the workplace, and this has happened with every generation. It's not new. But yeah, what I would say to that is F you. Gen Z is completely amazing, and we're amazing assets. And again, what I was to the point that I was saying, companies do need you because essentially you're the hardest consumer to market to as well. So if you're in marketing, it's just the cherry on top. If you're in any sort of creative field, video editing, social media, PR, it's just most of you are going to be perfect for it. But as well, Gen Z is great in other industries as well, because going back to the other point of being digitally native, we just immerse ourselves into the education and we just find a way.
We figure it out.
Exactly, because we're problem solvers. So you need to act like the asset that you are. If you're feeling like as a Gen Z person you don't have a lot to give, think again, because you truly do. And to finish everything off and to inspire you again to go out there, to meet people, to gain some skills, and basically just put our lessons and tips into action,
Be better.
is to share this quote by Seth Godin from his book Lynchpin, which basically means that you're indispensable in the job and you're invaluable. So, yeah, this is the quote. There are only two choices: win by being more ordinary, more standard, and cheaper, or win by being faster, more remarkable, and more human. Which means look for that unique competitive advantage. Look for that thing that makes you you and makes you absolutely indispensable and absolutely valuable.
Just take the rails of your life and know that you have the power to make shit happen.
Now, we just wanted to recap the entire episode for you guys. So, starting off with the number one thing we talked about: what to do when you feel aimless and like you don't know what the F to do with your life in your early 20s. So, in that point, we talked about finding your ikigai, doing this diagram that has like 4 bubbles. We already explained it way back. So, you can also search for a picture on Google. And that way you can find your purpose and don't worry about it. Your purpose can shift over time. You can have a different purpose now than you do in your late 20s, than you do in your 30s, than you do in your 60s. So don't sweat it.
We talked about diversifying and how important diversifying is in your early 20s, trying a lot of different things to figure out what exactly it is that you like. We also talked about starting your own thing or getting experience from a job. We mentioned that what feels easy will not challenge you and will not make you grow. So follow what feels challenging and what feels like it's going to help you grow.
Or find a balance. You can try to do both. You can maybe start at a small business, or you can do your own side hustle while having a normal job. Like, just look for that thing that is going to have you doing a bunch of things at once so that you can truly find what you thrive in.
And then we talked about how to break into an industry without any experience, asking for help from people in that industry. They are just an email away. And remembering that the amount of time we spend believing we can't is more than enough time to learn how you can.
Exactly. And immersing yourself in the education.
And then figuring out your competitive advantage, knowing that you innately have a competitive advantage if you're young. You also have a competitive advantage from whatever point you come from, your culture, your way of thinking, how you see the world. Those are all competitive advantages and things that make you unique to any industry.
Yeah. So use that uniqueness, especially your Gen Z advantage. Gen Z is really cool and we're the next wave of consumers.
Kelly looks like she's like making an ad for Gen Z. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys have any topics or questions that you would like to see answered on this podcast, please send them our way.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're feeling nice, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. And remember that we have a YouTube channel where you can watch us with
do
our faces.
You can watch our faces. And we actually have a new mood board set up. So if you're curious
to see how it looks like. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.